maybe even twice over, given that they were both fairly new in the business. The watch was of similar quality, and so were his shoes. He wore a pair of glasses that were probably meant to show that he wasn't all business and had a fun side, too. Hell, even his haircut was expensive. Two burly men stepped in on his heels. Their matching suits, the telltale bulge under their jackets, and the unmistakable combination of muscle and alertness were almost a bodyguard cliché. A single glance at them was enough to confirm that they looked formidable. One remained near the door, and the other took a position to the left of the massive desk. Their appearance didn't surprise him in the least, and especially not given that armed security downstairs had searched him for weapons, wires, and other devices before he'd been allowed into the elevator. He assumed the other operative had endured the same treatment.
"Gentlemen, sorry for the delay," the casino boss said. "I've been dealing with family issues, which include endless interruptions because casinos always need attention. You know what I'm saying?"
Neither of them did, and it didn't look like Marino even noticed their silence as he made his way to the truly impressive desk and dropped onto the chair behind it. He motioned for the two visitors to sit across from him.
"Julia, would you mind getting me an espresso and something for my guests?" Marino asked and looked from one man to the other. "Coffee? Water? Maybe a beer?"
Water's fine," John said quickly. A sudden attack of nerves clamored for something a little stronger, but he needed to present a professional front. Bryans had stressed that in the short briefing. He'd pointed out that this was his passport to the next level and hopefully a better future. That meant losing the rough thug in favor of the tough professional, especially since Bryans had stuck his neck out with the referral. He wondered what his finder's fee was. "For me, too," Mike agreed. He'd probably had the talk as well.
"2 waters and an espresso, please."
The secretary nodded at her boss and left quickly.
"You know what they say. Always hire a secretary who's easy on the eyes, and you'll never work a day in your life, am I right?"
"Sure." John glanced at his fellow freelancer and bit back a somewhat crude response.
"She still thinks I hired her for her qualifications," the man said with a laugh. "I mean, she has a ton, and she's only working here to put herself through law school, but still. Now, enough of the pleasantries. We can focus on the business I called the two of you in for."
That's why we're here," Mike said, and stated the obvious in a hopeful tone. "How can we help you, Mr. Marino?"
"Look, you guys know that my father is the late and great Marco Marino."
He leaned forward and took a sip from his coffee while he watched them speculatively. "I'm sure we don't know anything about your dearly departed father, and certainly not about any connections he might or might not have with La Cosa Nostra," John said, and wondered if he'd phrased that a little too obviously. He wasn't used to dancing with the mob, but the man seemed to take it in stride. "Yeah," Mike replied casually. He picked his water up and toyed with the lime on the rim. "All we know is that your father was a very successful businessman in the city, who opened a number of businesses and gave thousands of people jobs."
"A real titan of industry, your father,"
John confirmed. They weren't trying to be disrespectful to the man, but everyone in the city knew that Marco Marino was the head of Sicilian mafia in the city. Everyone but the local law enforcement, apparently. That said, everyone also knew you didn't fuck with the Sicilians, and that included being very careful how you talked about them.
"Good,"
Marino nodded as they passed some kind of test. His face was affable enough, but there was a hard light in his eyes that belied the pleasant demeanor he presented.
"So," he continued, "the reason I need the two of you is with regard to my father's less-than-legal dealings. That's why I made sure to recruit operatives from Bryans, whom he knew would have no issue working with organized crime. The list was long, obviously, but you two were the ones he personally recommended for the job. He said something about Coral Springs?"
Both men looked at him in implacable silence and appeared to have not noticed the deliberate question. It seemed the mafia boss wanted more details, but while they might not be top-level professionals, they knew enough to not shoot their mouths off. The fact was, John reminded himself, that he'd simply been in the right place at the right time. Bryans had a situation that escalated and needed extra people in a hurry, and he'd repaid the favor by pushing work his way since then. He'd be a fucking idiot to blab about the man's business. A dead idiot, probably. While Marino perhaps wanted to assure himself that they were the right people for the job and had what it took to get it done, they didn't kill and tell. It wasn't worth the risk to their own skin. Or maybe, he thought, it was a test to see where they stood on confidentiality. That seemed more likely. Either way, he'd not get a peep from either of them about that particular adventure. "So Bryans told you we were dependable and known for our discretion when dealing with illegal matters?" Mike stated calmly, but he shifted a little uncomfortably in his seat.
"Of course, that's why you're here." The man smiled a thin smile and shook his head. "Like I was saying, I need the two of you to deal with a sensitive matter regarding my father's less-than-legal enterprises in the city. As you are aware,